Welcome in, everybody. This is the Wednesday edition of the Falcons Podcast. We've got the Seattle Seahawks coming to town for an East Coast early game for those late birds out west. We've got a lot of trade talk coming up. I've helped stir the pot a little bit on the SI.com domain that we run, Atlanta Falcons on SI, talking about Hassan Reddick, talking about Max Crosby, because the Falcons, Nick, frankly, they need pass rush. Before we get into that, Nick, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I am doing okay. I actually went to bed decently early yesterday, so that felt good. But unfortunately, the little guy woke up with my morning alarm, which he hasn't done in, honestly, it's been probably a couple months. So that's unfortunate because that means my partner is up now as well with him, and she was not too happy about it. But, we're here. I got my Lion coffee. I was like, what hat am I going to wear today? Oh, yeah, duh. Aloha, of course. And beautiful Lion thermos that they sent me as well. It's a Yeti. I mean, this is no knockoff here. It's great. So
they're pretty top class on that.
And they've been saving me too because it's been a cold. I had a cold this week. I did that like 2 hours of sleep, a big hike that I did, and then the next day, Mills, my son, didn't let me sleep during the night. So the instant coffee at the office, hot water plus the little crystal pouches, which are perfect for backpacking or hiking. I should have brought it with on the hike. Perfect. So I know that we are not even to the read yet, but God bless them.
I know one of my first Christmas presents was like a coffee subscription from the kids.
Perfect.
My wife wrote it up like, since you don't sleep anymore, this is from us, Dad. Oh, thanks. But one of the reasons we go live and some of the things we want to get into, we want to kind of set the tone of the show. We'll hit on the chat first. We'll say hello to everybody. And I think there will probably be some Q&As in there about team building. I think that's where we'll start getting into the trade deadline. We'll start getting into some of the discussions about available players. That might take up most of the show. It typically does. So we will also get into a quick look at the Seahawks because they come to town. They've lost 3 in a row. They're a little banged up. But, Nick, I still think this is a dangerous team. I don't care if they've lost 3 in a row. I'm not taking this one for granted by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they are Geno Smith is a talented quarterback, and they are desperate right now. And when you go to a team that's desperate, crazy things can happen. But I do want to say, just kind of like I talked about in the Broncos show last night with Carl, then the Broncos going against the Saints, who have the far and away the worst run defense in the NFL the last 4 weeks. You might get a false positive this week with the Seahawks in terms of your pass rush. Now, it's going to be great to feel like you have a pass rush, but their right tackle, Scott, has given up by far the most pressures in the league at 35 pressures. The next highest in the entire NFL is 19. And their other tackles tied with 19 as well. And then the most guard pressures given up in the league this year, 18. You have a guard from New England, but also the Seahawks right guard. So they are letting up pressure left and right. Both. I mean, it's terrible. They're right tackle especially.
And right in the middle. Anybody that remembers the old movie Hot Dogs, right in the middle.
Yeah, they have been horrific in pass protection. So it's going to feel good to have this one. It's going to maybe want a little bit more, but I would not say like, look what we did against the Seahawks. And if you can't do it against the Seahawks, uh-oh.
But, some of that helps pad the stats a little bit. Other teams get to play the Seahawks too.
Yeah.
And, and a couple of those, like the New York Giants, lead the league in sacks. 49ers and Joey Bosa makes a few people look bad. And then the Detroit Lions, those are their last 3 losses. Yeah. So the Falcons need to come out of a game with 5 sacks. I mean, that would double their numbers. And all of a sudden it doesn't look quite as bad. And at the end of the year, we say that in soccer, we say that the table don't lie. At the end of the year, you are what your record says you are. If you've got 45 sacks, it doesn't matter how or where you got them for the most part. You got 45 sacks. Right now, the Falcons are on pace for 16. That's almost impossibly low. I mean, those are Stephen Means numbers. That's really, truly unbelievable. But I still think, again, a lot of it is self-induced. I mean, they're playing so soft. But however, their blitz rate is 20%, which is right at the bottom of the middle of the pack. So they're not the worst blitzing team. They're not low. They're 19th out of 32 teams in blitz rate. But they are easily DFL in sacks. And I never thought I'd see another 18 sack performance like we did in 2021, I believe it was. 22 got better. 23 was pretty good, was right there middle of the pack. I think 40, 45 sacks. This year's on pace for 16. And we're 6 weeks into the season, man. So I want to say hello, Red Swarm. Good morning, Red Swarm. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick and friends in the chat. That's all, y'all. Rise up. John Harrell says, good morning, Scott and Nick and the Falcons family. Again, that is all, y'all. What's the game plan for defense? Troy update. I expect Troy to be okay. Otherwise, this would be his third game out, and I would have thought they would have IR'd him. Short-term IR, and they haven't done that. 2 weeks ago, they said he was day-to-day. So I think the short week got to him, and then he wasn't quite ready. They figured they could, it's like, listen, we can beat the Panthers without Troy Anderson. Let's give him another week. I expect Troy Anderson to be back. The defense on this is get pressure on Geno Smith, crowd the line of scrimmage a little bit more to stop the running game. Watch out for Kenneth Walker. He is a cutback demon. And Geno will put the ball in harm's way if you put a little pressure on him, Nick.
Yeah, he's kind of a classic drop back passer, and they are not giving him many easy buttons right now. They do have 3 talented wide receivers as well, so you'll see a lot of 11 personnel. And they're kind of at a little bit of a impasse, maybe, because they have leaned almost a little bit too much into the pass game. They're almost to the point where like the rushing is not as effective, but you have to rush to help the offensive line out because you can't have them be passive in pass protection. Pass protection isn't always passive, but it's reacting versus enforcing a lot of times that they might need to even just lean into the run game a little bit. So they're an interesting team. Defense is banged up, and this is one where you're going to want to be ahead of the sticks against. We're talking about the offense as well, but McDonald out there. It's always McDonald, McDaniels. Which one is it? It's Mike McDonald. He loves to use those simulated pressures out there. I know, Scott. Cue the eye roll.
It's McDonald because McDaniel's a clown. Wait, what?
It's the other way.
Now I'm really confusing. Now it's super confusing. McDaniel's the clown. McDonald is the one that's competent.
Yeah. Well, and then there's also the one without the S and one with the S. Miami versus New England /
That's the one I messed up.
Yeah. But regardless, this is going to be an important game for the run game for the Falcons because it's really hard to run simulated pressures on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. So you got to stay ahead of the sticks, and it should be okay. I don't know what the spread is off the top of my head.
I think it's Falcons 3.
Falcons 3. So that's pretty good. So yeah, we'll see. This is definitely a injured, faltering Seahawks team that looked pretty good early on. That's not looking so good now.
Yeah, it's Falcons 3 over under a 51.5. That seems a little high for me. But the Falcons have been putting up some points here recently, and the defense hadn't been playing that great.
No.
Brendan Yowler's coming in with a coffee. He says, good morning. Right back at you. Thank you for the super chat and breaking the ice for us over there on YouTube. He says, good morning. Who do you think Atlanta will pick up? And I'm gonna piggyback this one, Brandon. Appreciate the stars with Rusty, because Rusty's got the same theme with his super chat coming in. He says, what's up, boys? I would literally go to the doctor and donate my left one if we could trade for Crosby or Garrett. No pressure is not sustainable. I'm 50 something years old. I don't plan on procreating anymore. I'll go with you. You know, you only need one. We could donate a full set. 27-year-old Crosby, golly, and some of the comments I had on the Crosby trade talk that I put in there were so stupid that I was disappointed that we didn't get more good discourse, some good conversation, intelligent conversation. Somebody called him Old Man Crosby. I'm not trading for Old Man Crosby, Old Man Pastor. The dude just turned 27. He's the same age as when the Falcons got Jonathan Abraham for a first-round pick. And he went on to, I think he's the second all-time leading sack man for the Atlanta Falcons. Crosby is a pipe dream to a certain extent. And so is Myles Garrett. He's 2 years younger than Myles Garrett. He's 3 years younger than TJ Watt, who's in 30. And I just don't think those guys are touchable. I really don't. It's going to take 2 first-round picks for the Raiders to even pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Unless Crosby says, get me out of here or I'm not playing. If he forces a move, that's the only way. And I don't know that that's going to happen. Garrett, on the other hand, getting a little bit older. Cleveland is a horror show. They're a clown show. I was born in Akron. I grew up probably as much a Cleveland Browns fan as an Atlanta Falcons fan, pretty close. And they're just a disaster. I mean, they're a disaster. Who came up yesterday? Njoku, the tight ends. And Njoku. It's like, would he be available? He's got a $30 million dead cap too. I'm like, they're somewhat under the cap this year because they have backdated all of their contracts. They're $50 million over the cap for next year. Yeah. So they got to figure out how to get rid of some guys. Myles Garrett, what do you give up for Myles Garrett? If you can get him for the rest of his career, you get 5 years out of Myles Garrett. Is he worth 2 first-round picks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 first and a third. Even like, he's unbelievable. He's one of the top 4 pass rushers and edge rushers in all football. He's pretty unbelievable,
though, isn't he?
What was that?
Wouldn't you consider him number 1?
I probably would. But there's enough like a few talented guys that it kind of like it's like pitchers, right? It's like who's on a heater right now.
Yeah, I mean, when we start going through this, that's one of the things that in this Myles Garrett discussion that enough people picked up on it after I wrote that article on Friday. Some of the bloggers and the YouTubers and our friends around the Falcon community basically all picked up on it and are like, hey, what about this? And now I see Max Crosby saying, well, what about Max Crosby? What about Max Crosby? He's 27. Myles is 29, I believe. He's just turned 29. And the guys that you think of, who are the top edge rushers, Nick? Would you go top 3, top 4?
I have 4.
Bosa, Garrett, Crosby, Watt.
Okay, actually I have top 5.
Okay.
Because Micah Parsons as well.
Yeah, Micah's in there too for sure. So apologies, everybody's in the chat afterwards in the comment. What about Micah Parsons? Yeah, Micah's in there too. When Micah's on, Micah's a destroyer. Yeah,
and the other thing about edge rusher for the Falcons is that you might have some serious competition now for the room because while you are in your Super Bowl win, I think you are definitely in a Super Bowl window right now. The Lions losing Aiden Hutchinson, who was the number 1 for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I wasn't ready to say he's one of the best edge rushers of football, but he's having the best season of any of the edge rushers so far. Now, granted, he had like 6,000 edge rushers against a backup right tackle for Tampa Bay. Sacks, but the Lions are very aggressive, and also the thing about the Lions is you can kind of, if you pay attention enough to the history, like who's come from where, you can kind of pick up on maybe trends in the past. And Brad Holmes is the Lions general manager. He came from the Rams, who made an in-season rental trade for Von Miller the year they won the Super Bowl. And they gave up a 2nd and 3rd round pick. Oh my gosh, so much for 8 games. Worked out for them in the end. Yeah, you won a Super Bowl. So that is the Lions would definitely be competition in that front as well, because while the Lions feel maybe built a little bit more long-term than the Falcons are. Well, granted, we'll see how this draft class goes, but, Kirk versus Goff in the offensive line and whatnot. They're definitely in a Super Bowl window right now. I mean, if they're not the Super Bowl favorite with Hutchinson, then they're definitely in the top 3. And now they lost him, they probably would be aggressive for him as well.
Yeah, and it's not just them either. I mean, if Crosby or Garrett becomes available, you're going to have to pay through the nose.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants that.
It's going to be huge, and that's where, again, I'll get back, and we got 8 times as many comments in the last video that we have in the previous videos because I have said one of the assets that the Falcons have that people might want is Michael Penix. People are losing their minds, man. Just losing their minds over the idea of our future. No, right now, Michael Penix is a number 8 draft pick who Falcons fans have then been convinced that he is the future of our team. No, right now he's a number 8 draft pick. He hasn't proven anything. If you were to even say Jaden Daniels, I'd say, yeah, his value's gone up. Caleb Williams, his value's gone up. Michael Penix right now, if you remove the attachment you have to him as an Atlanta Falcons player, he's a number 8 draft pick. That's what he is right now. He hasn't done anything else. Anyway, on that note, what I want to say thank you to is Lion Coffee. I just filled mine to the brim, though. is Lion Coffee, y'all. You can tell I'm getting kind of fired up, and one of the reasons is because I got my Lion Coffee flowing. I love it. They are a partner of the podcast. They're very good to us. Please check them out. Hawaii Coffee. And one of my favorites, they've got a lot to choose from, is a Cafe Honolulu. It's a medium dark, which is just right for me. And as our partner, if you go to lioncoffee.com, which you can see on the banner here, you get 20% off if you use the code GoFalcons20. That's in the description wherever you're watching this video also. So check them out. Partner of the Falcons fans. They're supporting the Falcons. Go support them. You won't regret it, I promise.
Yeah, you definitely won't. Some more factors, just getting into this Seahawks game. We talked about how bad the right tackle Stone Forsythe has been with pressures, as well as the right guard. So right tackle, right guard, Anthony Bradford, who I believe was like a third-round pick out of LSU. They are the second and third lowest rated players with at least 200 offensive snaps on the offensive line in the league. So it's not just the pass protection they are horrible at, but their run blocking is poor as well. And also just messing with the data here, talking about not letting the Seahawks get to third and long. On first and second down so far this season, the Seahawks are the second worst defense in the entire NFL on first and second down against the run in terms of EPA per rush. It's the Cowboys who, God, their run defense is freaking atrocious. And then the Seahawks right behind them. So even though they like to do those simulated pressures, and there's a word for when you use a nickel instead of a linebacker, but the Seahawks are not very good on first and second down. Hello, Bijan Robinson. Hello, Tyler Algier. I think it should be a lot of fun there. And heck, maybe even hello, play action kill shot on first and second down if they're trying to overcompensate for how poor they've been on first and second down.
Want to, real quick, I want to hop back into the chat, and then we'll get back into Seattle for sure. Going back into Hassan Reddick, Rusty brings up the clause that's in when on Hassan Reddick, when the Jets traded for Hassan Reddick from the Eagles, they sent him a third-round pick. It was a conditional second-round pick, conditional third-round pick. And I when I first wrote it up, I was writing it up. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to write this up as a third-round pick because whatever the conditions are, this dude ain't meeting them because he's not playing. Well, the condition actually is if the Jets trade him back into the NFC, that pick becomes a second-round pick. So if you're going to try and pry away Hassan Reddick from the Jets, Lord, all this green and white, and they're about 5 minutes apart too, because the New York Jets training facility is in New Jersey, and it's actually closer to Philadelphia than it is Manhattan. You would have to send them something that would make it worth enough for them to elevate their pick from a third to a second. I'm not willing to do that for him. I'm not willing to do that. I don't care if Drew Rosenhaus comes up, his new agent, because his last agency fired him because he was such a pain in the ass about what he wanted versus what he wanted to play for. If I'm Terry Fontenot and Drew Rosenhaus calls me up all with his honey-tongued messaging saying, oh, he's been working out, he's in amazing shape, come and see him, he's ready to play. Yeah, I still don't know that I want to send the Jets enough that they would be willing to give up, trade up from a third to a second.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate clause because he's one that could make a big difference for your team. Not the best edge setter. The run defense wouldn't be added a lot, but still somebody who's a very technical speed rusher and that could add a lot to this team. So we're hunting right now, and you might not be able to get your no doubt number one starter, but just to add talent to the room, you might be talking about somebody like a Baron Browning. I mean, obviously we were on Trey Hendrickson watch as well. Seattle's a weird one because their offense, I mean, Scott, their offense might be the best in the entire NFL, but their defense might be the worst in the NFL. So giving up their only good front seven piece, a hard pill to swallow. Maybe, I mean, hell, that's a team that's going to be wanting to pay T. Higgins here this offseason. There's some way you can send him cash on top of it. That would help, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
There might be somebody you could take for salary cap reasons. I mean, the Falcons don't have a ton of salary cap room either. They would have to get creative to bring one of these guys in, and they would. You know, it'd be somebody that you would want to sign again. It's like, oh, can the Falcons make that work? Yes. If you were to get a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett, you give him a 5-year contract the second he walks in and knock his 2024 and 2025 cap hit down to like $3 million. You do it. Keith and Ellen Johnson with the stars over on Facebook says, good morning, guys. Geno can be dangerous. Our defense worries me. Any rumors on signing defensive help? Nothing substantial. It's just a lot of speculation on, and frankly, I'm adding to that. The Falcons need defensive help. These are guys that could be available. So we're just trying to connect dots right now. And, there's not edge rushers aren't good. Pass rush isn't easy to come by at the trade deadline. And if you do, it's expensive. Bradley Chubb for a first-round pick when Miami went. That was expensive. The dude's going to be a free agent in 8 weeks, and you send him a first-round pick for that. That's Bradley Chubb. We're not talking about one of the top 5. This is a good pass rusher in Bradley Chubb. We're not talking about one of the top 5, and for my money, even top 10 guys. But a starting quality edge, which right now Falcons don't really have 2 of those. They've got one in Judon, and then they've got a couple situational guys, but they don't have a plus NFL player at the other edge right now. And Bradley Chubb was that, Nick.
Yeah, and they lost Jalen Phillips too. But yeah, it's be interesting. I do see Zadarius Smith is being talked about as well. That's an interesting option. I feel like he just signed a new contract, so it's like another one of those ones that kind of like we talked about in Njoku yesterday. The dead cap is pretty high. It's not typical that you see teams moving guys when the dead cap is so big. It's kind of like security to stay on the team. But the Browns are in such a weird spot that maybe that could happen. I'm just trying to look at the worst teams in the NFL too. I mean, would the Jags be ready and willing to give up on Travon Walker? I mean, I know that he's kind of considering Aiden Hutchinson went before him. People look at him as a bust, and he was number 1 overall. That was a pretty poor overall draft class as well. But he's like 12th or something in the NFL in pressures so far this season with not playing from behind a lot. And there's still a lot of upside there. I mean, a team like Tennessee, he's not a great starter, but he is a starter. Like Harold Landry could be an interesting piece to add to the room. He would save the Titans. I think it said, let me see, 17 million this year with 6 dead this year and 13 dead next year. But the Titans look awful. That's a team that's probably looking for resources because they are looking for a quarterback this offseason. So it's really interesting. Edge, like you mentioned, Scott, edge is hard to come by. We saw the flurry of wide receivers yesterday. Wide receiver is weird because there's ample guys available, but like the cream of the crop is like impossible in their prime to come by. But
what were the age of those guys that moved? 32. How old's I covered Cooper in high school, so he's got to be in his 30s.
He was really young when he came out, but I think he's 30 right now.
Yeah, and he's I
feel
like he's kind of a lot of mileage on that 30.
Yeah.
Like Julio. Julio might have been 30, but by God, he'd been rode hard and put up wet by the Falcons.
Yep. And I think Adams was 31, 32.
Yeah, I think he was 32. So I saw someone post, the Raiders traded this and this for Devontae Adams and only got back a third. I'm like, well, they got 3,000 yards in receiving from a 30-year-old receiver. When you're trading for a 30-year-old receiver, you're not thinking about resale value.
No.
So they did pretty good with Devontae Adams for the most part over 2.5 seasons. Good morning, Chris. I saw this. Hopefully we hit on this for you. Any chance we get Reddit from the Jets without having to give up too much? It depends. This is a relative statement, which I say all the time. What do you consider too much? I consider anything above a 5th-round pick to be too much. And I don't think you could get them to trigger the clause to trade him to an NFC team for less than a 5th-round pick. So yeah, I wouldn't gamble on Hassan Reddick. I would love to have Hassan Reddick in Atlanta for nothing. And if it doesn't work, you tell him to pack his bags. So when a lot of comments on our YouTube channel that I love the comments on these when we post stories, I'll go in and read all of these. And that was like one of my phrases is like, I want to be able to play hot potato with this guy, Nick. I want the flexibility financially and from a draft pick wise. I want to be able to play hot potato with Hassan Reddick.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be good to add. No doubt. I can't imagine. I mean, could you really get away? I mean, maybe the Jets could screw the Eagles and it's traded to an NFC team who then immediately trades him or an AFC team who immediately trades him to an NFC team.
It's a 3-way trade.
Yeah. I bet it's put into the league office, 1 second later.
That's fun, but that doesn't happen.
No, yeah, you'd have to get somebody to play ball.
That wouldn't happen. Calder, he says, why not trade Kyle Pitts to get one of those edges? Kyle Pitts would be a throw-in. I think Kyle Pitts might, and you got to consider that someone, depending on how much money, because he's $10 million a year, you might be able to get a third-round pick for him right now. Would be, I think, his ceiling. Kyle Pitts would be a throw-in. So when we talk about one of those edges, if we're talking about Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, you're talking two first-round picks and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, you might get like a 5th round back or something, just to give you another asset in the cost control department. But yeah, I think he's good. And also, we've said it on here before. Kyle Pitts is probably worth more on your team right now. The dead cap hit on that contract and what he's bringing. I mean, given how he plays and the areas of the field that he affects, he's probably never going to be a high volume guy. But if you're getting the explosives from him from the tight end position, which I don't know if you guys are paying attention right now, but across the league, the tight end is doing nothing in the NFL. And that's partially like the top guys starting to age out a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. They're old.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for sure. But
why is Laporta falling off a little bit? Is it part of that just quarterback change?
It's injuries this season. Okay. He was dealing with I want to say ankle. I expect him to be part of it as well. The other thing is that they're really starting to get a lot more from Jameson Williams, their former first-round pick. And if you can get your explosive receiver the ball versus your tight end, and, it's 20 to 40-yard catches versus, 4 to 8, you want to lean probably into the explosive plays if you can. But Laporte, I mean, he dealt with injuries early on. So I'm just kind of looking at the top receiving options right now at the tight end position. But yeah, tight end is like really fallen off this year. It's like Bowers is way up there, but he's kind of
but Bowers is a beast.
He's also 230 pounds. I mean, he plays more like Cooper Kupp than he does a lot of he's a slot, a big slot for
Shannon Sharp, who I always compared him to. Yeah, like a lot of y'all are too young to remember Unk as a player, but Shannon was 225 pounds. He played, he dropped in and played tight end.
Yeah, your top. Again, talking about Kyle Pitts, your top receiving players in the NFL. You don't have a single you only have 2 tight ends with over 300 yards so far this season. And Dallas Goedert, who's probably the most underrated tight end in football because he's also a damn good blocker.
Is he an Iowa guy?
No, he went to like South Dakota State or something. I wish he went to Iowa. He's great. But
Dallas Clark, was he an Iowa guy?
Yes, he was.
Okay, there we go.
I met Dallas a few times. My next door neighbor's daughter married Bob Sanders. And Dallas was over there a few times. And man, I was a little kid seeing those NFL guys' arms and legs. It was holy cow. Pretty good crop there.
Different level of human being. I want to get to Harry real quick on this. Talking about, again, Penix isn't good. Let's just get this out of the way, okay? Before everybody starts punching away their keyboards. The Atlanta Falcons will not trade Michael Penix. They have put too much emotional capital into him. They spent 6 months taking shots from the entire NFL about how stupid it was to draft Michael Penix, and they spent 6 months defending that pick. They will not then turn around and trade him. It's not going to happen. But on the discussion, when we're playing Madden here, when we're saying, hey, listen, take emotions out of it, what makes sense. If you move Michael Penix, Harry says, I'd be afraid Kirk would get injured or fall off the map next year, and we'd be right back in the QB purgatory. If you were to make a move like that, where you were to trade basically your most recent first-round draft pick, who's not playing, who is a backup, by the way, and isn't expected to contribute to this team, you're doing that because you think you've got a chance to win a Super Bowl. That's why. You think you've got a chance to win a Super Bowl. If Kirk Cousins gets hurt, are you winning a Super Bowl with Michael Penix? No, you're not. No. So, therefore, this comment doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. You're not hedging, well, we need to keep Penix in case Kirk Cousins gets hurt. If Kirk Cousins gets hurt, your goals of winning the Super Bowl are over anyway. Okay? So you don't really have to worry about that. So that's one of those things. But like moving forward, he says, if he gets hurt or falls off, right back in purgatory next year. Y'all, again, despite what the Falcons have said, you're allowed to try and get a quarterback again in the next draft. In the draft after that, you're allowed. This is not the only way to get a quarterback over the next 10 years is Michael Penix. It's Michael Penix or we're screwed for a decade. That's just not true. On that note, I want to hit some of these here. JB on here. All those edges y'all wanted to take have 1 sack this year. They're rookies is part of it. He's talking about in the draft.
I know,
So
but doesn't Jared Verse have more than that?
I think he's got 1.5.
Okay.
I don't think there's a ton of them unless because I went through this and someone asked like how many do these young guys have? And there's 3 first-round edges. It was Jared Verse, it was Dallas Turner, it was Leatu Latu. I think they're 1.5 sacks each, which might lead the Falcons, by the way. And their pressures is higher than anybody on the Falcons. So Turner hasn't been playing as much. No. I'm not going to question that on a 6-0 team.
Yeah.
So he just might not be cracking the lineup just yet. But Jared Verse and Leatu Latu would help this team. And to say they wouldn't is intellectually dishonest.
Yeah,
so they would help this team. And you're lying to yourself and you're lying to us if you'd say they wouldn't. Now, 3 years from now, would you rather have Michael Penix or Leatu Latu or Jared Verse or Dallas Turner? Well, let's have that discussion in 3 years. But right now, one of these guys that you wanted would help your team more than Michael Penix is. There's just no doubt about that.
Yeah, Jared Verse has been fantastic. He has 20 pressures so far this season. He's a monster in run defense too. You want to talk about setting the edge. It's again, the quarterback thing is kind of like when the Packers took Jordan Love. You didn't see him for 3 or 4 years. And the potential payoff on the quarterback is so high that that's the one position where it's almost in its own category of the process of drafting them and the risk you are willing to take on the hit rate. Now, does it hurt if let's say Penix doesn't work out or he just ends up being a middling, the 20th best quarterback in the NFL? That's not great, of course, especially because you're using 2-3 years of his rookie cost control. It makes him valuable, but the quarterback it operates in a different plane in terms of the risk you need to take in order to take the shot at the guy. So we're excited to see what Penix can do. He had one of probably the 3rd best arm of any of the quarterbacks in this past class. I'd probably take the actual RPMs and the velocity of May and Williams. Oh, and I guess there's Milton too, but I'm not qualifying Milton in that group. But we're excited to see what Penix can do, and that happens. And we're happy that the offense is going right now with Kirk, because the defense has a lot of questions, and obviously an edge rusher would have helped. The cornerback would have helped. Terry Arnold's having a good time out there. Quinyon Mitchell is starting to look pretty good too. But I totally understand the process of we fell in love with a guy, and we don't know if we'll be up here again. If you love a guy and he's there in front of you, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, and again, I think I've said this before. If part of the reason this was a little discombobulated, where you're spending all that money on a quarterback and then drafting one, was the coaching change. Mm-hmm. Was if this staff had been in place, they probably would have gone one or the other, not both. But it was the timing. They didn't get to go to the Senior Bowl. They were late to the evaluation process, and that's okay. Whatever. It will play out. We've beaten that one into the ground. JB also asked about Yannick Ngakoue. No, he's not available. I'm pretty sure he just got signed to the 53 by the Baltimore Ravens. I'm almost positive I saw that one, JB. Morning. Love my new routine. This is from Robbie Rollins. Are we one player away finally? It's awesome, but also nerve-wracking. Arthur wants a Super Bowl now, not just for him, but also Jake Matthews and Grady Jarrett. So one player away. Are you one player away? It's so hard to make a Super Bowl, but if you had a top 3 edge, and this is kind of the argument, if you had Max Crosby, if you had Myles Garrett, 2 guys on spiraling down the drain teams that in a pipe dream would be available, and it's going to cost you a lot to get them. Are you a Super Bowl contender? Oh, yes, especially if you keep one of those guys from going to Detroit. Yes, you are. This Falcons team with one of the top 3 edges is a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah. You're a Super Bowl contender right now. It's just, it doesn't feel like your defense could, step up and make the stop that they need to as it currently stands. Really you see it in the playoffs all the time. You need a closer on the defensive line, somebody who can go out there and get, 3 or 4 pressures in the big key moments to close a game out, or, those pivotal moments. And Judon's a useful piece. Grady Jarrett's still a useful piece. And Onyemata's been a great signing, but you just don't have that closer on the defensive line. That said, I mean, you're definitely trending towards having a top 10, dare I say top 5 offense in the NFL. We'll see if guys stay healthy, but I mean, it's definitely heading in a positive direction on that side of the ball. So I also, just for the chat in there, I traded Scott. I told Scott yesterday, but I made a trade for Drake London on my fantasy league. So hopefully he keeps it up, because he's been getting pelted with targets, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And I need a little skin in the game. But so hopefully I didn't
firmly believe I'm a jinx. So when I was playing fantasy back in the day in my fandom, I always drafted Saints.
Yeah. I kind of
if they do good, at least I'm winning fantasy. And if I do bad in fantasy, well, screw them anyway.
And I keep seeing questions about the Daryl says, do the Falcons defense have help or better play from the guys they have? I mean, both. Really, you could either way. It'd be nice if Ebiketie or Carter or Harrison stepped up even more than they already are showing, but kind of is what it is there. As far as I keep seeing questions about the scheme of the Falcons, I have from Football Insights here, good Twitter account to follow. They have the coverage rates of the Falcons, and the Falcons are the tied for the 3rd highest in the NFL in cover 3. They're tied for the 3rd highest in cover 6. Not too much cover 4. But
real quick,
sorry, go ahead.
I want you to put some context with those statements. They're 3rd highest in cover 3 and cover 6. What does that mean they are doing?
They are sending more bodies in the back end of coverage than in the front. Cover 3, you're spinning a safety down with your 2 cornerbacks going back. Cover 6 is quarter, half. So you have a one cornerback taking a quarter of the field, safety taking quarter of the field, and the other safety taking a half the field. A lot of times it can be match coverage as well. And you're just really not seeing a lot of cover 1 or cover. You see an okay rate of cover 0. So they will dial some pressures. Absolutely 0% cover 2 man. So not trusting the pass rush, the run fits, and the linebackers and the cornerbacks there. It makes sense. But a lot of cover 3 right now. So, I mean, it can work. Steelers have the 2nd highest rate of cover 3 in the NFL. So it's a lot.
They also have TJ Watt and Alonzo Highsmith.
And Hayward.
And Hayward. And was it
Minka.
Montravius Adams in there getting in there too?
Yep. And
was that
Keanu
them?
Benton. Yep.
But yeah, that's part of it. And real quick, what that means in dummy terms like me is the Falcons are backing off and giving up the underneath stuff, saying we don't think you can get 6 yards of play and go 12 play drives and sustain that without making a mistake.
Yeah.
And again, so far it's working. What I always hang my hat on right now, because Dave's pissed. This defense stinks, period. People are getting sucked into this joke. I think people understand. Listen, if I can't rush the passer and I'm bad against the run, which right now that's what the stats say, you're in trouble. That's going to be poor. What I hang my hat on right now, y'all, first 5 games against some pretty good teams. The Falcons defense stood up when they needed to and got the ball back and put it in the offense's hands with a chance to win the game. All 5 of them. 3 of them they won. Against the Steelers, they had multiple chances, and that game was an aberration on offense. Okay, but the defense put the ball in the defense put the ball in offense's hands. Philadelphia Eagles stood up and made a stop, thanks in part to Nick Sirianni. Thank you. But they did. They stood up, made a stop. Next game, Chiefs. Kyle Pitts was out of game tying. Would that have been a go-ahead? I don't remember. Would that have been a go-ahead score with Kyle Pitts in the end zone when he gets mugged? But they had stopped the Chiefs at that point.
Yep. Yeah.
Tampa Bay, yes. New Orleans, yes. The defense has stood up when they've needed to. Now, can you do that on a longer stretch? Because you can't count on Russian roulette of we need a 50-50 chance of winning a game in the last 2 minutes. Can they do that? We'll see. I think they can, but they've got to prove it.
Yeah. I mean, right now they're pretty closer to the bottom 10, but not quite in the bottom 10 in EPA per play. They're the 21st team. But when you look at the clumpings on when the distribution of the teams, they're pretty close to the middle of both axes. So You want a little bit better there, of course. And yeah, it's been the run defense has gotten a little better, luckily without the massive quarterback scrambles. And I keep seeing it in here. I brought it up as well. I don't know if it's still true this week. I'm waiting for the data to come out. But entering last week, they were number 1 in the NFL and not giving up explosive plays. So that is something to hang your hat on, considering how much explosive plays lead to points scored. If you have like 1 in the drive, your chances of scoring points like quadruples versus 0. So not giving up explosive plays. There is something to that. But you're not aggressive enough. It's a hard style to play, right? It puts a lot of pressure to be perfect, rather than going out there and giving yourself an advantage on the yards to go.
Here's the question, talking about the big time pass rushers, Royce, is what's the cost of these pass rushers and can we afford them? Because one of my favorite responses is we talk about, okay, this is what it might cost. And someone says, well, I'd rather do this. Well, shit, I'd rather pardon me. Well, heck, I'd rather do nothing. I'd rather have them just come here with the fairy dust, the stork deliver them. But that's not attainable. I'd give up a first round draft pick. They wouldn't take it. So Roy, if we're talking about which is a long shot anyway, because these guys are so freaking valuable. Myles Garrett and Max Crosby became available on 2 spiraling teams in the AFC, and the Raiders and the Browns, who are just going right down the toilet and have 2 really good assets to rebuild. The conversation starts with 2 first-round picks. That's where it starts. It's not where it's going to end. And you're not going to be the only one willing to give up 2 first-round picks to get those guys. So that's where it starts. 2 first-round picks and then some. That gets the conversation started. Flat out. It's going to take more than that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Talking about this, Brandon, I forget how stupid people can be online. And I've really dealt with a lot of morons lately online. And as far as some of the conversation goes, like Nick, and all the time, I'm like, listen,
you
at
idiot.
least do a little bit of research before you so passionately state something as fact that is 100% wrong. You know, you're wrong on this. This isn't hard to figure out. This is an opinion. You're wrong. Old man Crosby. Crosby's 27, you idiot. So on that note, Brandon says so, definitely some keyboard gangsters out there. I'm like, yeah, Nick always closes the shows that we do, choose kindness and compassion. Man, it doesn't cost anything to not be an a-hole. So I'm willing to have the conversation. I love the conversation, but let's have one. Let's have the conversation on this one. Coming back in here, Buck says the Bucks running back room better now or just a fluke last week. I'm not sure what that question is. Love to hear your questions in here.
They went off against the Saints. They ran like crazy. I'm very happy to have Bucky Irving on my team. It's one of the reasons I traded for Drake London, because I'm like, okay, I got a running back 2 right here. Great. Or a running back 3. But they went off. I think that it was a little bit fluky last week.
Almost 600 yards of offense. That's a fluke, period.
And also how they did it. I mean, Baker Mayfield had like 1 pass that traveled beyond 10 air yards after the first quarter, I believe. So, yeah, it was a weird, fluky game. Sometimes it happens. Definitely an outlier. But I think that the Buccaneers have some stuff on offense right now. I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's a good quarterback, but he also has a little bit of bonehead in him from time to time. He'll put the ball in harm's way and just kind of lose his mind. He's another guy he's not nearly as athletic as he thinks he is out on the field, and that can get him into trouble. But talking about trading for edge rushers, I mean, Tampa Bay is another team that if one of these guys was available, I would be very interested if I was Tampa, because I think the offense looks pretty good. But the Yaya Diaby is great too, but the opposite side to it, Joe Tryon hasn't really been a guy for them, and they could maybe use
next week. We don't have to break down the whole team, Nick.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a freaking dangerous squad. I absolutely do. If and when they get healthy across the course of the 17 weeks and into the playoffs, I don't want to see Tampa Bay in the playoffs. I think they can be really dangerous. I think they're a good team. When like the Falcons won that game, they've got the head-to-head, but Tampa's ahead of them in all of the NFL power rankings. I'm like, fine. I'm not going to raise too much heck about that. Tampa's good. They are good. The fluke was The Denver game was a little bit of a fluke. I don't know what happened there. It's like Denver came out and started throwing the ball forward, caught everybody by surprise, and then it just kind of spiraled. And Denver's defense is good. Denver's defense is also very good. Chris Williams coming in with some stars over on Facebook. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the support for the show. He says, good morning, gents. Right back at you. He says, I'm a season ticket holder, been to all 4 home games. Imagine keeping Ryan Nielsen with the defensive additions having this offense. There was Ryan was very good at scheming up pressure. You know, they had 45 sacks, and I think the leading sack man was 6.5. Was Bud Dupree, and I think he was tied with somebody else. I don't think it was Calais. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're both gone, so it was probably Calais. So they lost their top 2 sack guys, and he had 45 sacks, which was double what it was the year before. I still think a little bit of this, Chris, is scheming. I think it's a complete bend but don't break. We trust our offense to win us games. Let's not have our defense lose them, which is frustrating to watch. It is, but it's working. You go into the Carolina Panthers game up 5 into the 4th quarter, and you're thinking this game is way too close. Well, give the Panthers enough time. Let's just not screw this up and let them get behind us. They'll screw it up for you. They did. There's going to come a time where this team has to be more aggressive. This might be the week. It's coming. It's coming, Chris. And I'm waiting to see it. Yeah.
That is a you can hope so. I mean, you want Nielsen so bad he might be available here pretty soon. As Trevor Simpson says, Nielsen has 31st ranked Jags defense. I'm very much a believer that it's about the Jimmies and Joes over the X's and O's a lot of times. But yeah, he's not doing very well in Jacksonville right now. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here with him. He was pretty good with the Falcons last season. But also, Scott, we kind of talked about it on here. It was a little bit of a mirage because of the how bad the Falcons offense was, that teams didn't feel like they had to put up points, right? They could control games. NFL coaches, for the most part, at their core are conservative, right? They want to control the entire operation. So, why would we, push the envelope and have these high variance plays when you have Desmond Ridder on the other side of the field? And he's probably, if we just, protect the football and control the operation, he's going to mess up and we're going to win the game. A little different now that your offense is explosive and putting up points. So that was I think that's a little bit impact of the Nielsen defense last year. And I say that coming from a Iowa perspective, where Iowa's always top 3 defense. It's well, kind of, but the offense is so bad.
Wasn't really trying to score.
Yeah, it's we got 3 points. We're good. Iowa's got an offense now. They can run the football. We'll see what happens with Nielsen.
As JV says, let's bring back Calais and Dupree. Calais might be open to that. I can't imagine. I really, it's nice to say we have good people working for the Falcons, where when someone goes away, I don't think you'd have a whole lot of trouble bringing them back. No, man, I'm not going to work for them. It's like Arthur Smith is a good owner. He's a good person. Terry Fontenot is professional. Raheem Morris, people love. So if you reached out to the Dolphins and Calais, I think Calais would be open to coming back, even though he wasn't brought back before. So is he what you need? I don't know, man. I really don't. But that's one of the things you can be proud of as a Falcons fan. Is this is a quality ownership. I said for years, I never felt like the Falcons were a legit NFL team. Even when they had Michael Vick, it felt like they were playing street ball and just had the best player on the field until Arthur Blank took over and installed some business operations for this team. So Calais, Bud probably ain't coming back. Chargers are pretty good out there. He's playing a lot. They need him. But Calais, maybe, who knows? Gary Apalka, that's a cool name. First time catching you guys live. Well, I appreciate the support. Thank you. And we get a lot of folks who watch. Most of our views come after we go off live. Almost 10 times. So I love it when people come in and say hello after the fact, or say, hey, we took the chance to come and see you live. Thank you. We certainly appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you guys put in. Recommendations for Lion coffee flavors. Good question. Again, this is like my go-to, the medium dark. That's like my daily blend. It's Cafe Honolulu, medium dark. They've got a bunch of different flavors. One of them is kind of interesting. They've got a coconut coffee that I'm like, I don't know what that's like, but golly, I work down in my basement. My office is in my basement. And when I brew the Lion Coffee coconut coffee downstairs, my basement smells amazing for the whole day. I'm like, I dumped this stuff in there. So give those a try. There's some dark roast, medium, breakfast. They've got a ton. And what's kind of cool, I'll bring them out next time. They've got individual packets. So get 10 of the singles and see what you like on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I love the macadamia vanilla, and I'm excited. I'm almost done with this bag of macadamia vanilla, and Patrick, our guy, Lion Coffee, sent me the lion's mane one, which has the lion's mane mushroom in it, which is it's like one of the very few foods that has like crazy. It's like definitely a superfood. And I think it has like brain regenerative stuff in it. So I know a lot of people are all about that lion's mane mushroom right now. So I'm excited to try that one. They also have the gold roast, which is pretty darn good as well. So yeah, they're great. And we got Jeebus H. Christ, Grady and Yamada Cook. I mean, I love that. That's a Simpsons reference. I don't know if you recall, if you watch much Simpsons, but
not since I was 17 years old, Nick. That's how long they've been around.
That's me too. But there's an episode where I don't know, plane goes down or something.
Simpsons in 1989.
Yeah, very good. I'm a big fan of The Simpsons, but I love Conan O'Brien. So anything that he touches, I'm interested in. One of the writers there for a long time.
The Simpsons were edgy. The Smart Aleck Liddy, when they came out, they were edgy. And then South Park took it to another level. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. And now there's stuff on a different level than South Park. But
I know.
They're not cooked per se. Grady is definitely not the impact rusher that he used to be. Anyamadas, I mean, he's still pretty darn good. He was never really, a giant pressure kind of guy. He's playing more of that one technique stuff. They're both fine. But I don't think you want either of them to be your alpha on the line anymore, especially as pass rushers. So good, useful players, but not difference makers, high impact players right now that we've seen. I'm hoping Grady, maybe catches some things, but we'll see.
There's some conversation going on here about the drafts and stuff, but JBC, no, is Grady. We think of Grady as such a Terminator that we expect him to be Grady the second he steps on the field after coming off of knee injury, an ACL. Typically, to get quick twitch back in an ACL is 18 months. He's a quickness player because he's not size, and he's strong as hell, that's for sure. But he's got to beat guys off the snap. And when he gets, and especially when you see him move outside a little bit, the closer he is to the center, the less effective he is. He needs to be tackle, guard, center. He needs to be in those gaps, not too wide because he's not quick enough to get there from the outside. Basically a straight defensive tackle. And if they don't double him, he's in the backfield. And when you go out in the system like they did last week against the Panthers, with David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, and then rotating two guys in behind him, but two defensive tackles, Arnold Ebiketie and Matt Judon with a four-man front, and then basically dropping seven guys into coverage the whole game, your defensive tackles aren't going to do anything. I'm doubling them every single freaking time. Mm-hmm. So, again, part of that was scheme. It really was on this. Some conversation on here, and let's run through this a little bit. I saw the question on here about the someone talking about the draft, and did the Chiefs build most of their team through the draft? They did, for the most part. You build your team through the draft, and you supplement through free agency. Prove me wrong, because the Chiefs have certainly done that. They've certainly built through that way. The Patriots dynasties, they build through the draft, and then once you're a winner, you can get high quality free agents for cheap. Guys at the back end of their careers willing to come in and play for $2-3 million to try and get a ring, Nick.
Yeah, you want to use it to supplement your draft. Good teams are drafting players and then re-signing those guys, and then using the free agent money you have to bring in, third contract guys chasing a ring to complement the roster, or it just a guy who's been kind of buried on a depth chart. But you're not the winners in free agency as far as the most money spent are hardly ever the teams that are holding any hardware come the end of the season. So Free agency's nice. Obviously, Falcons were a winner this season with Kirk Cousins. You can definitely win free agency with the quarterback stuff, and that can change your team. Speaking as a Broncos fan, when they brought in going from Tim Tebow to Peyton Manning, but it can be pretty rare as well. You don't want to depend on that. It doesn't matter if you're not drafting, because that's the lifeblood of your roster's health.
Want to run through this, see Rusty's comment, and then we're going to get going here shortly. About the Falcons not being that great on the back end of the draft. I'm going to call that day 3. I'm not even going to call it day 2. I'm going to call it 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. And Terry Fontenot had 4 drafts in Atlanta. Arthur Smith was basically a co-GM when he was in Atlanta as well. They had a bunch of day 3 picks their first year when they had just gotten here, because Arthur Smith was hired and Fontenot was actually hired after Arthur Smith. And they had gotten here in January and February and then had the draft just a few weeks later. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 day 3 picks their first year. They came out at, I'm going to call these guys hits. 4th round, Drew Dahlman. 5th round, Taquan Graham. 5th round, Avery Williams. So 50%, I would say, were hits on the second round. 2022, they only had 3 day 3 picks, and one of them was Tyler Algier. We all agree that one's a hit. 2023, they only had 3. And it was Clark Phillips, DeMarco Hellams, and Javon Gwynn. Phillips is a hit for a 4th round pick. DeMarco Hellams to be determined, but 7th round guy. He's been hurt. I think he's lived up to that. And then so far, this class has been an incomplete. So I think the Falcons have been pretty good on day 3. One of the problems is they haven't had enough day 3 picks.
Yeah, day 3 picks are, penny stocks. You'll see what happens there. But they're never really. You don't want to live on day 3 picks. It's lucky if you hit them, and they're definitely good for like the back end, the depth of the roster. But if you look at the hit rate after the first 120 picks in the draft, it falls off incredibly high. So really, I think it's a lot of the day 2 stuff for the Falcons that I think has been hurt. I mean, you talk about Ebiketie, you talk about Hennessy, you talk about like just guy after guy, Richie Grant,
Mayfield, Richie Grant.
Yeah,
day 2, really, D'Angelo Malone, Desmond Ridder. Day 2, Steven.
It's day 2
has been tough.
Yeah,
day 2 has been tough. Yep. I agree with you on that. Day 3 has been okay, but again, if I hit 50% on day 3, I'm considering it good. That's why I want more picks. Again, I always go back to some of the people who are just, they post with such confidence about stuff they are so wrong about. I just envy that level of self-confidence. When they said you draft guys always want to have more picks because you always think you're going to hit. No, it's actually 100% the opposite, you idiot. We understand you're going to miss, so we want more picks to heighten our chances. If I only have if I'm going to hit 1 of 2 free throws and I got to make 1 free throw, I want 10 free throws to make 1. Because I'm a terrible shooter. I want more, not less. So that's where that goes. We're right at an hour, Nick. You look like you've got something you want to say. So what's on your mind, brother?
We need to pick the score of the Seahawks game. So I'm going to go with the Falcons winning this one 30-17. I think that they're going to be able to put it on them. I think they're going to be good on 1st and 2nd down. And I think that your pass rush is going to show life that you haven't seen very much this season, just because again, we talked about it to start the show. The Seahawks offensive line and pass protection is the worst in football right now. So I'm expecting a good game from those guys.
Oh, I think you've got to be disciplined. If you're going to play soft, you better be disciplined, or Kenneth Walker is going to slice and dice you to pieces. He is really good at jump back, cutbacks. And if you're not disciplined and you're going to play soft, so I think they're going to crowd the box a little bit more. I think they're going to be a little bit more up front on top. San Francisco was really successful with 7-8 guys in the box. Drop guys off if you need to, but stop the run, force them into passing situations, and then Geno put the ball in harm's way. And looking at his numbers, he's thrown for a lot of yards. Because I said, watching him play, I'm like, okay, I know he's thrown for a lot of numbers, but just watching him, and I didn't know the numbers at the time, I said, goodness, he puts the ball in harm's way a lot. Well, he's leading the NFL in yards at almost 1,800. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's a terrible ratio for a guy, who's leading the league in passing yards. You want that to be more along like 3-1. So don't let Kenneth Walker beat you, and then put some pressure on Geno Smith. Oh, they've lost 3-0. The Falcons have won 3 in a row. The odds are, it doesn't matter. If you flip a coin 10 times in a row and it comes up heads, your odds of flipping it 11th heads is still 50-50. So throw out what's happened. Let's look at this game. I think the Falcons are in a better spot right now. I think they're at home. I think their defense is better than they've shown. And I think the offense is clicking. The running game's going to be available for you, and the Falcons have shown that they can beat you running or passing. I'd love to see a nice balanced attack. 250 to 300 yards passing, 150 yards rushing. You're putting up 450 yards of offense and 27 points.
Yeah.
27-19 Dirty Birds over the Seabirds.
Pretty good. I mean, we'll see. This is definitely a winnable game for the Falcons. So here's hoping for the best, and that offense continues clicking, and the defense pass rush can find a little life. This will probably be their best matchup they have for that all season. So chance to go to 5-2.
And it's important because going on the road, you're probably going to be underdogs at Tampa. I don't want to lose this one, and then if follow it up and you lose at Tampa and you're 4-4. This team's better than 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
With a 4-2 start, win this game. Give yourself a little bit of a cushion. Win this game. Take care of business here. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, Steven. Thank you. There is a 1%, a 1/10,000th of a percent, 1/10,000th chance that the coin lands on its side. I'm not flipping it that many times, dude. That's to find out if that's true or not. I'm not flipping it 10,000 times to figure that out. And JB says, we're sweeping the South. Come on, Scott. JB, how old are you? I'm old and cynical. I've watched Lucy yank the football away from me as an Atlanta sports fan too many times. Not gonna do it, but I'll let you know. I had a discussion with my son yesterday about bias. We're all biased, okay? There is no such thing as unbiased. One of my bias is I am scarred from living in this city for 40-something years. I'm scarred, but I'll tell you that. I'll let you know. I am cynical. That is my bias. I'm rarely going to pick the Falcons. I'm rarely going to choose prosperity, but I think the Falcons are the better team. I really do, and I think they should take care of business. Let's wait. I can't wait to see it. It's fun. It's fun again. This is the most excited I've looked forward to Falcons football in a long time, and I hope you're right there with us. Can't wait to see y'all on Monday. Have a great football weekend. Check out Lion Coffee. Again, just real quick, remember, lioncoffee.com and use the code GoFalcons20. It's in the description. Wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, it's in the description to get 20% off. You will not regret it. Big thank you to our Super Chat superstars like Brandon and Rusty coming in a couple times, Keith and Ellen Johnson, Chris, thank you, my friend, Gary coming in, and JHC also closing us out. Nick, any last words?
Should be a good game. No, if anybody Broncos fans are in here, no Broncos show after this today. And no show Friday, Victor says. We did a Falcons show Friday just because it was a Thursday game, just like we're doing a Broncos show Friday because they play Thursday this week. So hopefully Denver can help you guys put a little distance further in the NFC South with a Saints team that is tail spinning right now. But yeah, definitely got to go because I can hear some upsetness.
He's got to go. There. Nick, get out of here. I'll answer a couple more questions and get going. We'll see you on Friday. Victor, Nick and I will have a show. We're going to do Broncos for breakfast over on Mile High Huddle to talk. And you might be interested, Falcons fans, because we're going to talk Broncos Saints. And we're doing the recap show for that one. YouTube.com/Mile High Huddle. It's us. So you know what we're talking about, but we'll be focusing on Broncos Saints on that one. If you want to join us for some football conversation on Friday. Otherwise, thanks everybody for being here. Love y'all. Hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you're getting your notifications if we do have an off-schedule show. And we will see you on Monday. If we don't see you on Friday, have a great football weekend. It is gorgeous out right now. Enjoy October. Falls in the South. There's nothing better. See y'all later. Thanks for being here, everybody.